As a student and teacher of comparative religion, one of the most intellectually dishonest ideas that I routinely encounter is the notion that all religions are ultimately the same. And unfortunately, a large number of these cases tend to be either Indians or Hindus. Now, I want to unpack some of the reasons for why that is and to offer logical rebuttals and clarifications to highlight where exactly they're getting it wrong, sometimes harmlessly, but sadly not always. You see, Indians and Hindus have a strong tendency towards this sentiment, and one of the main reasons for that is just how pluralistic the country and its culture are. India has 22 official languages and over 100 unique dialects, all within one country. It is home to at least 4 major religions in Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and Jainism, and has millions upon millions of practicing Muslims and Christians living within its borders. Hinduism alone houses an incomparable variety of philosophies, methodologies, theologies, deities, scriptures, and more. The people are raised to think in broad terms, to be open-minded and inclusive. But it is precisely because of that that it becomes incredibly important to not become too loose in our use of language, in our understanding of ideas, and in our analytical thinking, to the point of no longer being able to discern one thing from another. Harmony and unity are valuable spiritual pillars, but not if they come at the cost of another fundamental pillar, truth. Now, to begin my analysis, let's see an example of how this situation plays out in the following speech by Shah Rukh, India's most famous actor, a self-professed Muslim, and a highly influential figure.
Yes, my wife is a Hindu. My children say Nasrun Minallah and Bismillah, and they say the Gayatri Mantra also, and it's quite okay, and it's nice. And a lot of my friends are, yes, sort of hardliner Muslims, and they also come to my house and listen to the mantra, and then they listen and see us do the namaz. And sometimes we don't do it properly, and the hardliner guys just teach us how to do it properly. And I'm okay. I'm like, good. It's a learning experience. So I've never really been picked on. And I don't think any Muslim will ever pick on me either, because I do speak the word of Quran, which is actually quite like the word of the Bible, which is quite like the word of the Torah, which is quite like the word of the Gita and Mahabharata and everything. It's all the same here. I find it so strange when we're fighting about this. It's like same novel, same topic, just different languages. What is the issue, man?
Now, watching that, your first thought may be, why do we care what an actor says about religion? Or even, why are you criticizing him? He isn't an authority on the matter. Well, that is fair, but not really how the world works. As Krishna states in chapter 3, verse 21 of the Bhagavad Gita, Yad yad acharati shrestas tadat evetaro janaha, sayat pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. Whatever an eminent person does, other people also do. Whatever standard that one sets, the world follows. So as can be seen, persons like Shah Rukh Khan are hugely influential, whether he desires it or not, and therefore his words carry weight, and most importantly, responsibility. Now, the cynic in me would say that Shah Rukh Khan just doesn't want to lose any substantial fan base for his movies by alienating or criticizing any particular religion, but in truth, I don't think Shah Rukh Khan is being consciously dishonest. I'm actually quite sure that he does genuinely hold these beliefs. But just because he affirms these things, it doesn't make them true. In fact, he is displaying a common error. He is equating the harmonious coexistence of different religions within the same household and by the same practitioners in a syncretic manner with the idea that therefore all religions are compatible. They are, as he said, teaching the same thing, the same topic, just in a different language. Now, before I refute that, I must be fair in acknowledging that there will always be some form of prescriptive behavior or overlap among the various religions, such as in the call to surrender, devotion, discipline, and so on. However, in many doctrinal matters, there are huge contradictions that cannot be reconciled. In the Quran, in Surah An-Nisa 4:48, it says, "Indeed, Allah does not forgive association with Him, but He forgives what is less than that for whom He wills. And he who associates others with Allah has certainly fabricated a tremendous sin." But at the same time, associating partners to God is incredibly common in Hindu scripture. In the Udyoga Parva, section 48 of the Mahabharata, we read, Vasudeva, who having mowed down in battle by main force all the royal warriors of the Bhoja race, had carried off on a single car, Rukmini, of great fame, for making her his wife, and by her was afterwards born Pradyumna of high soul. So here, Lord Vasudeva, who is clearly established as a supreme Lord in the Bhagavad Gita, is said to have married Rukmini and had a son named Pradyumna. Now you may point out that this difference is philosophically trivial, but to a devout Muslim, associating a wife and child with God is a tremendous sin, one not forgiven by Allah, as per the Quran. They would undoubtedly have to reject the Mahabharata's concept of God in order to avoid eternal separation from Allah in sin. And just like that, we have broken the supposed oneness of these texts. Any attempt to trivialize or dismiss what I have just brought up, these issues, would only serve to showcase people's propensity to cherry-pick and to distort their religion and their scriptures to suit their own personal utopian, ideological framework. In other words, blinded and stubborn wishful thinking. Now, to show you just how far this desire to harmonize at all costs goes, let's watch another video from Nishanth Silvalingam, a popular Hindu speaker and guide on social media.
Here are 5 arguments to prove that all religions are indeed the same. First, all religions have produced remarkable saints that demonstrate tremendous virtue. We must judge a tree by the fruit, and obviously all religions have produced great fruit.
His first point, he said, we must judge a tree by the fruit, and obviously all religions have produced great fruit. Now there are plenty of problems with this, not least because all religions have also produced plenty of bad fruit. But essentially the main error here is the logical fallacy of composition. The fallacy of composition is essentially a fallacious line of thought that suggests that if it is true of the parts, then it must be true of the whole. Just because religions have produced saintly, virtuous people does not mean that the entire religion, with all its philosophies, methodologies, doctrines, customs, is now proven to work. In fact, statistically, given how many more non-saints there are than saints, it would be a far more reasonable assumption to suggest that those who have become good fruits did so in spite of their religion, not because of it.
2. Practices are generally, broadly speaking, the same. In each religion, you'll find an emphasis on meditation, on contemplation, on selfless service, and on devoted self-surrender, or in other words, prayer. So if the means are the same, clearly the ends are the same too. Since all different religions in the world share the same practices, there must then be the same outcome for those practices.
In his second point, he says, so if the means are the same, clearly the ends are the same too. Since all different religions in the world share the same practices, there must then be the same outcome for these practices. Now, there are 2 major problems here. First, his assertion of equivalence in the practices of all religions is simply untrue. Now, I know he said, broadly speaking, they are the same, but he must have meant to say very, 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 very broadly speaking. Because to characterize, for example, Islamic Salat, Christian Mass, and Hindu deity Abhishekam as basically being the same because of their common devotional intent is frankly bizarre. Deity worship would immediately be condemned as idolatry by both Muslims and Christians. In the same vein, Muslims would absolutely condemn the Christians for taking Holy Communion, as once again, they're associating a partner to God, namely the Son, Jesus Christ. Now, the second obvious issue with this claim is that he has committed the non sequitur fallacy, i.e., the conclusion does not follow the premise. Now, even if the practices are the same, why would that necessarily produce the same outcomes? Practices are conduits for intentions, for aims. Many of the world's religions have different and distinct goals. Therefore, even if they all outwardly engage in the same practices, they inevitably do it for different purposes, to attain different outcomes. For example, a Buddhist may meditate with the clear intention to experience the cessation of suffering, to experience a state of pure being, or even an absence of identity. Yet at the same time, a Vaishnava may also meditate, but on the pastimes of their beloved Lord Krishna, with the single aim of attaining their true identity and a perfect loving relationship with their Lord. It's not the same.
Thirdly, the point of religion is to learn to live a meaningful, noble, and happy life. Now, every religion has produced happy people, and that means every religion works to some extent.
Now, point 3, he says, the point of religion is to learn to live a meaningful, noble, and happy life. Now, every religion has produced happy people, and that means that every religion works to some extent. Again, this is far too simplistic. Most religions have a transcendental state of existence as their aim, be it the heaven of Christianity, Jannah of Islam, or the Vaikuntha of Hinduism. Producing happy people does not mean that they are guaranteed a transcendental outcome, and reduces religion to a somewhat mundane affair. The fact that all religions can produce happy, meaningful lives for people may actually have a lot more to do with basic human psychological needs that are being met. For example, our sense of belonging, of purpose, community, and hope, than anything else, or it may not, but it most certainly doesn't serve as proof that all religions are successful.
Fourth, God is limitless. So how can we put limits on God by saying he only appears in this religion and not in that religion, that he must be a he and not a she or an it, etc. So if God is truly ineffable and unlimited, who are we then to limit him to this or that religion?
Now, in his point 4, he says, how can we put limits on God? By saying he only appears in this religion and not in that religion, that he must be a he and not a she or an it. Now, this is actually one of his better points, but it isn't without its problems. He's right in saying that God transcends all limits and confinements. God can indeed present himself in any manner he so wishes, without restriction. As a he, as a she, as an it, with form, no form, and the list goes on. But the key factor here is that God can present himself in any manner he so wishes, not us. This opens up two possibilities for each of the world's religions. The first is that God chose to reveal himself in a particular manner, time and place as described within that particular religion. The second is that he did not, and therefore the religion and its concept is in fact man-made. So while I agree that we should not limit God or restrict his movements, it does not automatically follow that as a result of that, the God of all religions must be the same authentic God, presenting himself in diverse ways. In fact, one of the most famous verses in Sanatana Dharma can be found in the Rig Veda, Mandala 1, Sukta 164, Mantra 46, and it says, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. The truth is one, but the wise speak of it in many different ways. It's incredibly important to interpret this verse correctly. There is one truth, one God that can be described in a number of ways, but the truth remains objective despite our subjective cognitions of it, and so cannot be expected to conform to whatever we wish to make of it. That truth decides how it presents itself, not us.
And finally, mystics all the world over have all had mystical experiences walking their paths. Hindus experience the vision of Krishna. Christians experience the vision of Christ. Muslims have deep absorption in meditation on the 99 names of the Lord. You see, Kabbalists have experience of the Merkaba and all the Sephiroths in their body. It's quite natural then from that to conclude that while religions might be different on the surface, the mystics of all the world religions speak the same language. Mystics are not at all interested in arguing about what to call water because we're all too busy drinking.
Now his fifth point, he says, while religions might be different on the surface, the mystics of all the world religions speak the same language. Now this serves as a pretty fitting final point. He's consistently conflating distinct categories. Human nature is universal. God is universal. Even the realm of subjective experience can have a phenomenological uniformity to them. Therefore, the fact that mystics experience similar states across different religions is actually easily explained by these foundational universal commonalities. But religious doctrines are not universal in the same way. Consider, for example, the doctrine of reincarnation prevalent in Hinduism, or that of original sin in Christianity. It is not a matter of belief or choice. Either it is real or it is not. These are statements about the composition of reality. You either have one life or you have many. You cannot have both. We are either born with original sin or we are not. You cannot be born both with and without it. However, in contrast to that, you could have God appear as both Jesus Christ to a Christian and Krishna to a Hindu, and it would not break God's nature, because as it was previously stated, he's not bound by any limitations. There is a clear distinction there. So to summarize my thoughts, and to offer a recommendation for how to tackle this topic, I would say the following. The wish to unite is deeply spiritual and natural. At a soul level, we are factually all interconnected as parts of the Supreme Lord, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, verse 7. Mame vamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha. An eternal fragment of myself becomes embodied as the living beings within this mortal world. However, in contrast to this, it is our mundane nature, our false ego, that tends to divide and judge. So if all of that is true, I may well be accused of sowing division instead of fostering unity. But that is not my aim at all. My intention is not to put anyone off from pursuing unity and commonality, but rather to educate them in how not to do it. You see, the flawed reasoning and superficial arguments used by Shah Rukh and Nishanth Selvalingam are easily exposed, and so they end up making more harm than good to people's faith. It is incredibly important that if you do wish to take on the difficult task of building bridges between religions, you do so in a grounded, intellectually coherent, and most importantly, honest manner. State our differences exactly as they are. Point out the commonalities exactly as they are. And then collectively we can choose if we want to give more importance to that which can unite us or to that which will continue to divide us further. Jai Gurudev.